If you're a man between the ages of 30 to 55, then what I'm about to explain in this video is exactly for you. Because I'm about to show you that it's not too late to lose that stubborn belly fat and your love handles. And that if you follow these principles, you can be healthier in your 40s than what you were in your 20s. And as a byproduct, maybe even get a set of abs in the process. For those of you who are new around here, my name is Mark and I've been an online coach for nearly 4 years now. And I've helped hundreds and hundreds of guys, probably like yourself, lose the stubborn belly fat, drop over 10 kilo of body fat, and actually become the most fulfilled and healthy, confident versions of themselves in the process. And over the next 10 or so minutes, I'm going to show you the 3 key pillars that we use with our client Brian, which helped him lose over 16 kilo of body fat and actually regain quality years back onto his life, despite being a dad of 2 and running his own business. Now, if you implement these pillars, I can promise you that you're going to make at least some progress within your fat loss journey and be in a better position than you currently are sitting here watching this video. Now, before I dive into the pillars that we utilize with Brian, I actually want to give a little bit of context on Brian before he started. See, he went through practically all of his 30s, not really focusing on exercising, having too many weekend takeaways, and having too many weekend pints. He put his business and everything else before him, which ultimately caused him to lose a lot of his energy and actually lose himself in the process as well. Now, he went through this through the entirety of his 30s until he reached a point where he was climbing up a flight of stairs and he was out of breath doing so. And for him, that was a light bulb moment that things had to change. He was wearing clothes that were fitting too tight around the stomach and kind of hanging off of his arms, and for him that was the telling point that, okay, like, I need to do something about this now. Now, he had tried in the past, but every time he made efforts, he would lose a couple kilo only to fall off the bandwagon, and then that would be him, back to square one. And that's what led him to work with us. Now, if you feel that you're in the same position that I've just described Brian was, I've left my calendar down below. Go and click on it and book in a time to have a call with me to actually find out where it is you might be going wrong. Best case scenario is we actually find a solution for you, and worst case is you have a clearer idea on where you're currently going wrong and the things to action. So let's go through these key pillars that we used with Brian and show you how you can implement them for yourself. The first pillar was actually understanding our nutrition top to bottom. Now, we knew to lose body fat, we had to put Brian into a calorie deficit, but first of all, we had to calculate how to do that for him. Now, when Brian started with me, he was 82 kilos, so it's roughly 180 pounds. Now, what we did is we multiplied his body weight by 14 to find his rough maintenance calories, and then we looked to deduct between 300 to 500 from this. So his maintenance was 2,500. Now, we actually started at his maintenance calories so we could understand the response that he would have to this. This meant we could get his metabolism firing before we started to pull foods away from him and initiate the fat loss process. Now, we started these calories at maintenance so that we could begin a linear fat loss phase. Where a lot of you guys are going wrong is you automatically drive your calories super low, but where do you then go to after that? You've already started them super low and you don't have anywhere to go. So we start high and begin to build down from that. Now, we knew the calories that we wanted to start him on was around 2.3 to 2.5, so it then became about building a meal plan out for him, which included the favourite foods that he had. The meal plan allowed him to remove the decision fatigue. Where Brian went wrong in the past is he would often overthink what he had to eat that day, that he had paralysis by analysis, and he ended up actioning none of it. So building a clear nutrition plan that removed the thought process for him was super key. Within that meal plan itself, we wanted to have 1 gram of protein per 1 pound of body weight to help him preserve muscle, but also to keep him satiated as we go through a diet. Protein is the highest satiating macronutrient, so when you're trying to diet, it's really important that you keep this around 1 gram or 0.8 gram per 1 pound of your current body weight. We kept his fats a little bit higher at 70 gram, purely from a hormonal balance standpoint to help his testosterone levels stay in a good position, because we knew we were going to diet, and then we let carbohydrates do their thing depending when he was training or when he was resting. Now, Brian, as I mentioned, is a dad. He has 2 kids and he has a wife. So encouraging foods inside the plan that actually revolved around being able to sit down and have dinners with his family was really important, because it meant they were included within his fat loss journey. We actually encouraged them to have off-plan meals at the weekend because it was a separation from the meal plan that he had midweek. Now, we actually did this in a structured way where we planned ahead for where we were eating out, and we banked calories ahead of time, which meant that he was still maintaining his calorie deficit for the total week. Because remember, your body doesn't understand days, it only understands its energy balance over longer periods of time. Now, from progress wise, we wanted to see around 1 pound drop off per week for him, and when we noticed that his scale weight started to stall, we would simply pull back around 100 calories each time, mainly from his carbohydrate sources, keeping his fats and his proteins in a healthy position. So through this process, he was still having drinks at weekends and he was still going out for off-plan meals, but we managed to regulate that full process so that we had predictability from his inputs with foods. Through the linear fat loss phase, we started to continuously drop off body fat and drop off body weight. Now, the lowest point that Brian got to towards the end of his diet was 1600 calories. This is what we had to put him on so that he could lose the fat, but we did not do this from the start the way that a lot of you guys are doing. When we reached the 1600 calories, it was for a 3-week period. We kept his protein high, we kept his fats as high as we could, and we noticed that this was allowing us to really pull off a lot of body fat, which ultimately revealed his abs. Now, the biggest thing through getting his nutrition on point was he had clarity. He understood when he had to eat, he understood what he was eating, so the whole process became autonomous for him instead of having to really think about what he was doing and getting that paralysis by analysis. We also allowed him to eat his favourite foods that he could include his family with. We allowed him to have foods at the weekend because having something that's sustainable is going to allow you to have fat loss consistently instead of the 3 weeks that you're running just now only to fall off and still keep your belly. So we changed the mindset around foods, we controlled the foods that he was consuming, and we made sure that we knew exactly the inputs so that we could guarantee the outputs. Pillar number 2 was an effective training plan and controlled output. Now, what most guys do is they drop their calories super aggressive from day one and they do as much cardio as they can. All this does is cause you to burn out and lose a lot of muscle. Brian didn't want that. Brian wanted to lose the belly fat, but also look jacked along the way. We still wanted to fill out t-shirts in the right areas. With Brian being in his 40s as well, it was also about actually improving the quality of his mobility, being more functional, developing more joint and bone health, so that when he turns 60, 70 and 80, he's already done the work now that allows him to live a longer and healthier life. Now, we also emphasised that he didn't have to spend his entire life inside the gym. Brian's very time poor, running his business and being a real positive dad for his 2 kids. So getting something that was time efficient was paramount. We created a 4-day training split that had an upper session, a lower session, a full body and an accessory day, so that he was targeted on 3 45-minute sessions, and the 4th was a bonus. Within these, we focused on compound movements to improve his overall strength and functionality, and made sure we included some accessory movements towards the end of his workout that didn't require that much energy, but also improved areas like his biceps, his triceps, and his delts. Now, the common mistake guys make is they think they need to be in the gym 7 days per week. Brian had 3 to 4 rest days in total over the course of the week. In his 40s, you need to make sure that you're looking at your recovery capacity, because you can't work out the same way you did in your 20s, and that's the mistake that guys are making. They use the same system they had in their 20s as they do in their 40s, and it doesn't work. Now, having them 3 to 4 rest days allowed his muscles to recover, meaning when he went into the gym, he was getting really good, effective sessions because he felt fresh to do so. That is what's key for muscle building and longevity. Within his role at work, he had really high step count, so we didn't need to focus too much on getting any steps outside of work. However, if you're someone that's watching this and has a pretty sedentary lifestyle, you can either drop your calories a little bit lower to accommodate that, or you can focus on getting steps every 5 minutes of the hour. But in Brian's case, he had high step count, so we leveraged this initially. Step counts is a very, very easy way to get into more energy burning state, pretty low volume and pretty easy to do. When we moved in towards the latter stages of his fat loss, that's when we started to leverage a little bit more cardio, and we would do this via the Stairmaster because for him it was the most time effective way to burn the most amount of calories and put him in a bigger deficit. But also the focus for Brian here was to be healthy. So actually testing his heart rate in that 130, 140, 150 and 160 range allowed him to be more cardiovascular healthy and again add quality years back onto his life. With the training, when we ran into areas where he felt pretty tired and pretty fatigued because of being a dad, running his business, trying to lose this belly fat, we would run deloads. This is when we would take an extended period away from the gym, usually 3 to 7 days, that allowed his body to recover. During these days, we stuck to rest day calories, so he was still in a fat loss state, and we kept his step count where it was at because this didn't create fatigue. What these deloads allowed us to do is have a small pullback to then have an even bigger bounce back. Within the training itself, we focused on as much progressive overload as we could. This is where you're increasing on the reps or the weight that you're lifting each week, and it's key to build muscle. And we also dialed in the intensity that he was training at. If you go into the gym training with intensity, you are going to A, burn more calories, which helps put you in an additional deficit, but mainly in a fat loss phase, you're going to help preserve, or maybe even in some cases, build muscle. The biggest positive for us with Brian's journey didn't actually come from him developing his training and developing his knowledge. It actually came when his son turned round to him, his son's 16, and asked him if he could go to the gym with him. As a dad, that was what his big motivation was for getting in shape and doing all this. This is him realising that he started to have a real positive impact onto those that he loved most by investing in himself. Now, I know that all this training and the dieting and knowing what to do and knowing where to start can be quite daunting. I totally get that. If that is the case for you, if you head on to the description, click on that diary, book in that call with me. No strings attached, no obligations. It's just a sit-down chat with you and I where we can try and strategize where you're at and maybe identify if we can help you get to where you want to be. Again, worst case is you'll have some low-hanging fruits that you can action like that. The third element which allowed Brian to get abs isn't actually anything to do with training or nutrition. A lot of it was to do with mindset. See, Brian, like many guys out there, before he started this journey, felt like he couldn't really do it. It felt like him getting in the ideal shape he wanted to be was almost unattainable. And this came from the fact that he had never done it before. So he lacked the education on how to do it, and he lacked the belief that he could actually make it happen. So giving Brian the education to show him the proof on how to do it, but actually giving him the accountability and the belief and the evidence that he could do it was massive, and almost stepping through a door to realise I can actually be someone who is healthy. I can be a role model for my kids. I can have abs. I can have my dream body. This compounded over time allowed Brian to see himself in a different light, where he actually looked at himself as someone who is healthy and does have positive routines and habits and traits. And inside our program, we talk about developing an undeniable stack of proof. And this is where you look back at the last 6 months and you've stacked so many things that back up who you say you are. In Brian's case, he ticked off all his sessions, he stuck to the nutrition plan, he's seen the weight come down, he became more educated. So he then started to raise his belief through actions instead of affirmations. And this is super key when you want to step into that untapped potential that you watching this right now probably have, but have never really explored. Now, combining the three of these is what managed to get Brian his set of abs, losing 16 kg of fat at the age of 42, despite having 2 kids and running his own business. He went from lacking clarity, having bad habits and a really poor self-perception, to being someone who had a clear mind, who was having a positive impact on those who he loved the most, his wife, his kids. And this actually helped him with a thriving business. His business was hitting new revenue goals and continues to do so every single month. Now, when we look at Brian now, he goes on holiday with a set of abs. Beach shorts on, walking the beach with absolute self-certainty and confidence because of these pillars that we put in place for him. And for me, the most important thing is that not only have we got Brian to that point, but we've taught him how to do this. He can sustain that healthy lifestyle and body that he has all through his 40s, into his 50s, all through the rest of his life. So what does all this mean for you? You cannot fill others' cups if yours is empty. As a man aged 30 to 55 watching this right now, it's so important that you do something for yourself. Your role is to be fit and healthy for those who you care most about. And it isn't impossible to have that. All you lack right now is the right structure and the right guidance to make it happen. See, Brian isn't special. He just took action. That's the only difference here. And the reason I know this is because we've not just done this with Brian. We've done this countless times before with so many other lads who were in similar positions, and we've managed to not only get them in the shape of their life, but teach them how to do it. Now, if you want to be part of that and you feel that you've gained a lot of value within this video, all you need to do is comment below, or you can drop me a personal message on Instagram and we can have a little bit of back and forth on how we can make it happen. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If this has given you a little bit of a better insight into how to get abs and you've taken some value, please drop the video a like. It means so much. And also make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because we're going to be putting out a lot more educational content exactly like this.